Pleasure to meet y'all at last. And, so you can see, I'm not just rocking out a new t-shirt, I'm also getting myself some Under Armour cold gear. And the reason why is because, well, it is November. It's going to be going on December in a few weeks, but since it's going to get much, much colder, then I've still got plenty of questions left to answer here on Why's That. And so I'm going to wear my Under Armour and just keep on going. And I'm going to carry on through the cold as I wear both of this, alright? But for today's question, we got ourselves actually quite a few that involves my linguistics. Now, even though I already spoke about my linguistics and my skills based on linguistics in general, this kind of question based on linguistics about me is actually in a different direction, in contrast to the last question that I answered based on how many languages I could speak in total, which was 8. Which was 7. And so far what we got around here is actually quite a bit of people who did not really seem to... And what we've got right here is actually quite a bit of people around here who actually seem to enjoy my answers to the questions, and more importantly, how well I could speak in those languages based on fluency. And in general, I'd say that kind of answer really was a crazy good turnout. But this question is almost certainly like a follow-up to the last question that I made based on linguistics. And so this question does come from another Twitter user, but get this. Instead of going with another kind of question based on my linguistics, this Twitter user is instead trying to question about my American, the language that I have generally spoken almost all of my life, and what every other American has spoken all of their life. So the question this Twitter user ended up asking me was, why is that out of all languages you speak, American just so happens to be your favorite? Well, get this, American has actually been wrongfully sought for as a language that we do not speak. The only language that we have to speak is somehow English, but of course it is not true at all, on account of the fact that English comes from England, not from the United States. And so what we've got here is actually quite a bit of a system right here that we're just trying to figure out if it's American or English that we ultimately speak. I, for one, know, not guess, or think that it's American that we speak. I know that it's American that we speak. And it just so happens that I can actually hear out of people's mouths that it's American coming out, not English, American. And there's actually quite a few reasons behind as to how American is far more of a different language from English, despite the fact how American had actually originated from the English language. Here's reason one to that. One is that sometimes the letters are mispronounced by the English and we pronounce them differently. Americans pronounce them differently despite context with the English pronunciation of certain letters. With Z and sometimes T. T and Z are two letters of the alphabet that we have today that the English do not really seem to pronounce in the same way that we do. They pronounce Z as Z. And for Canadians out there who are seeing this right now, the same thing would apply to you as well. Canadians in English particularly say Z as Z. That's their pronunciation of Z. Whereas with T, in most words of which that involve the letter T, they hardly put any more emphasis than they should in the T's. I'd say if you had yourself the word 15 or the number 15, then the English would pronounce it as 15 or 15. Not 15, because when we say 15 or anything like that, any of the teens, any other numbers that have the letter T in it, or any other word in general that have the letter T, we put more emphasis on the letter T as we progress towards saying those words, as we go along. But here's another reason as to how American may have delved from the English language, but ultimately is its own independent language. Reason 2 involves the fact that when somebody is singing, since they have generally known the English language as something that Americans speak all their lives, up until today, of which the thing is going to be changing soon, when they sing, they generally sing with an English accent. And with the English accent, of course, there always comes the very, very, very low emphasis on R's. And of course, there's also other parts and context as to how they don't really pronounce words the right way than an American would. An American would normally speak the right way, but when an American is singing, pronunciation is just gradually dropped the way an American should pronounce it. Of course, there's lots of songs out there in the world today that also do the very same thing, but not all genres are affiliated with how they do pronounce some words incorrectly when singing. For some country music artists out there, and otherwise, most of the time they do pronounce R's the right way, but there are a few out there, including Brad Paisley, that pronounce R's incorrectly, of course. You can't always blame them though. I mean, somehow what's not to like about what kind of music you enjoy? But here's reason 3. That would make 3 good reasons as to how American is going to be its own independent language, and no longer will English be a part of this country. Reason number 3 is because there's quite a number of words that associate with the English vocabulary that of which the American vocabulary doesn't even include. Things like bollocks or ducky. Terms like those apply to the English language only, of which that Americans do not typically use. Fact is, I've likely never heard an American say ducky or bollocks or anything else in general that relates to English countrymen out there. So right there, that makes up reason number 3. Now I'm sure there's going to be actually more reasons to come by based on how the English language is far more different than the American language, and it's not even relative, and it's not even related, and that would make American its own existing language in the world of linguistics. So there you have it, really. American is a language I speak, but there's actually more to the American language that differentiates it from the English language. Number 1 is because of some expert level words, including charisma, serendipity, perpetrator, masticate, titillate, and others like that. Terms like those have specifically applied to the American language, that of which that the English does not particularly use. And the reason being is because since America has been around for more than 240 years, we've known for a fact that we vowed to become one of the smartest countries this world has ever seen. Despite the claims of how we've used to become the fattest country in the world, and that we've also used to become one of the stupidest in the world, there's a darn good chance out there within 275 years from now that we'll have ourselves one of the biggest brains in history. We'll have ourselves the smartest people this country has ever seen, the highest IQs even, probably even higher than William James Hillis. And there's also lots out there that has something to do with the American language in total being the generic makeup of our own being here in this country. North, south, east, west, everything else in between, as well as central, this country has any of which that you might not normally be able to see in any other country in the world. With freedom, liberty, justice, any of those that specifically apply to America's makeup, then we have ourselves quite a country this world has ever known. Since 1776, we've gotten ourselves quite a bit of anything that we could possibly ever imagine. There's so much science, there's so much government, there's so much economics, there's so much of whatever there is to know that America has gone through within the last 240 plus years. That, for one, I can definitely picture how well any of them would turn out. I've learned many of these in school, but get this, I've been out of school for a little while now, and I've known for a fact of what else there will be to come. Not only that, to just get a full-time job and give myself a living, but to also really focus on what else there might be for me to come across. If there's any other bits of science, then I'll get to it. If there's anything related to history, then I sure as heck would come through that. If there's anything related to whatever there is based on personal financing, then sure, of course, I can really deal with it. But the bottom line here is that with a language that we've spoken for more than 200 years, and the fact that we've been lied to our whole lives, really, because of the fact that there's such thing as English classes in schools around the nation, and there's no such thing as American classes, we've only gone this far out of, well, much wider than my entire wingspan, but you can pretty much catch the drift as to how I am implying that the American language is real, 100% authentic, and it's gonna be a really big thing to learn out there that that's the language we speak. We do not speak any other languages unless we want to. Because that is what an American is. Americans are independent, they're much higher in stamina, they're strong, they're free-willed, even though I don't really have free will. And they've also got a lot of characteristics that make up their DNA. And they've also got lots more that make up their personality. They got lots that make up their social life. And so with that being said, that would pretty much just end the question overall. But here's the big answer to it. American is my favorite, of course, out of all the languages that I have spoken within the last 10 years, because of the fact that it is a language that applies to us, not to the English, because they're not Americans, of course. Even though America was currently founded by Englishmen, including Christopher Columbus. Even though America had been founded by people of England, we know for a fact that since 1776, since 1787, since 1804, since 1881, since 1889, since 1898, since 1901, since 1910, since 1920, since 1951, since 1966, and from there on out, we've had ourselves quite a huge arrangement of achievements that have come on by since the country had been founded. And now we know for a fact that on our way to the tricentennial period, July 4th of 2076, which is nearly 58 years from now, there's a darn good chance that by that time, the American language will be understood by many around the world. We've tried to do it before, but now we're deciding to really take action as to how the American language had been our language all along, and not English. So, there you go. You got yourself quite a bit of a story right there. That is realistic, by the way. It is always true. And if you want to see more, go down here on WiseDad. Make sure that you send me your question in the comment section below, or send it to me on Twitter. You can tweet me about it. And make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.